Alright, so we're talking about finna, one of my favorite African-American vernacular phrases. Now, there's no official spelling or pronunciation, so some people say fixna, some people say fitna, I say kind of like finna, but they're all the same. It has the exact same etymology that took a phrase like going to and turned that into gonna. Fitna is from an old southern phrase, fixing to, which you'll still hear people use today depending on where you live or how old the person is that you're talking to. Now, your cousin, the one studying that microbiology, he fixing to be a doctor. Finna works almost exactly like going to or gonna, but it really exists somewhere between about to. Hey, I'm finna go to the store. You want some? And going to. Hashtag Black Lives Matter. Hashtag critical race theory. Alright, I'm out. Ooh, it's finna be a war in the comments after that one, boy. Needed to be said. How my wig look, baby?
What's happening, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Download Malfunction. This is a space where we discuss a lot of the madness and dysfunction that is taking place in our society today. This post is directed at my people, Black folks. I think we really need to talk about this. So make your way to the front of the congregation, grab yourself a bite to eat, a bag of popcorn, because I think this is going to be an interesting one. This isn't the first time that this topic has been talked about. I think it's been hashed out ad nauseum in our history in this land. And I definitely think it's worth talking about today because it seems to be an ongoing issue that no one seems to talk about in this manner. As the topic suggests, I strongly believe that Black folks lack the basic fundamentals to survive in a white man's world. I plan to share a couple of my anecdotal experiences from my family, as well as show you some footage of a lot of the politicians and people who we seemingly respect making the same point. So from the outset, we're talking about these fundamentals that we lack. And it's going to be in relation to success, achievement, and advancement in a social structure. I think that most people would agree with me that if you're going to be competent at anything, or if you're going to excel at anything, there are basics that one must have in order to do that. Because oftentimes when we talk about a cultural paradigm, if you don't have those basics, most times you're not going to be seen as part of the group and or culture. So if you don't possess those elements, it can get to the point where you're viewed as extremely different and even as an outsider. For example, imagine you have two Hispanic families. One's coming from the West Coast. Say you got a Hispanic family from Mexico City who decides to take a trip down to South America. I don't know, say Peru. The moment these two families engage in conversation, the Peruvian family will know immediately that the Mexican family is different. He'll know that the Mexican individual, even though they share a similar language, but it will be apparent that they don't share the same culture. Similarly, right, if you are Nigerian and you decide to take a trip down to South Africa or a different country, say Sudan, they will know right off the bat that you don't share the same histories. You most probably won't be familiar with the same things, or you most probably won't be familiar with each other's culture. And to the person visiting that dominant society, oftentimes this can be a disadvantage when we're talking about achievement or success. And when I say Black people lack the fundamentals to survive in a white man's world, I'm not talking about everybody. I'm never talking about the complete whole of anything when we're having these discussions. So if you haven't figured it out yet by the opening clip, this basic fundamental is based around language, which in my opinion is an essential element as it relates to culture. I don't know about you guys, but it's fairly easy for me to racially profile someone. You can put a blindfold on me and put me in a room with 10 different ethnicities, and I can most probably tell you who is and who isn't black. Again, not talking about everybody, and it's never everybody, but the number is large enough to where this is definitely a valid conversation. I mentioned culture and language earlier, and language being a key component to culture. Think about it. When you share the same language as those in your community, it presupposes many things. And through this language, you're able to share, interests, shared history, politics, religion, philosophy. I'm not saying that black people don't speak language properly or they don't speak the English properly. But like I said earlier, I think the number is significant enough that this is a must-have conversation. So with that being said, when you're talking about language, language determines most times the comfort level of those on the receiving end. For example, if you happen to grow up on the west side of Chicago or South Central LA, your choice of words, the tonality, the vernacular, all of that plays a part in your identity. But if you were to take that same vernacular to, let's say, a very conservative city like Orange County, California, or upstate New York, just like the two Hispanic families and the two African families, those folks would know immediately a few things about you. One is that they'll know, hey, you're not from around these parts, partner. They'll know that you probably don't share the same interest in history. And also just as important is that they may feel at ease or uncomfortable just even talking to you. And the reason why this is important, and we're going to get to the meat of this, the reason why it is important as it relates to the dominant culture is because that is where the power and opportunity lies. And the dominant culture's English is different, right? But more importantly, it's considered the standard. So from what I can see, or better yet, from what I can hear, black people just do not have command of the English language. Consequently, this circles back to what I was saying about culture, comfortability, shared interests, familiarity, etc., etc. Honestly, I believe there's a disconnect between understanding the importance of properly speaking the language among black folks as it relates to the dominant culture and retaining an identity that is clearly counter to what has been labeled and solidified as the norm. Listen, I'm thoroughly aware of black people's history. I've read about this subject. I've talked about this subject ad nauseum. I know the brutal history that African Americans have had to exist under in this land. I've had discussions around this all of my life for the most part with scholars, educators, clergy, family members. So I'm not lost on this history. And I know that has been very detrimental to the advancement of black people in this country. But I think we need to be honest that in order to succeed in anything, and specifically this culture, you got to have command of the language. It's just a must. I understand that the black community has a very unique identity just based on their history. I don't know. Maybe their tonality and the vernacular is the way that they retain that uniqueness, and that's fine. But what I'm saying is that you have to be able to switch this up. You need to learn how to be on your best chameleon if you're going to be taken. Sure, you can have that texture, right? You know how black folks talk, and I can do it on command, depending on my environment. But you got to be able to switch that up if you're going to be taken seriously. And the reason why this is important is because the dominant culture is where the power and the opportunity lies. It doesn't lie with the minority. We know where they stand economically. I just think you got to be on your best chameleon and know how and when to turn that off and on. And being able to do that oftentimes will aid in one's survival. But when we're talking about the dominant culture, being able to speak the language properly is essential, right? Because just think about this. If you're coming out of South Central, born and raised in South Central, and you got that vernacular, and you don't know how to turn that off, what happens when you need to go sit down and have an interview for a job? Or what happens when you come across someone who is fully engrossed in the dominant culture and they're very successful, and they may, think about bringing you into the circle of trust or bringing you into the fold, right? No one's going to want to bring somebody into their space that they're uncomfortable with. So if you're not able to, because you just never know when you're going to come across somebody in the dominant culture that holds the key to your next upward move. Remember, I told you that I was going to tell you a story, a couple of stories actually that happened in my life that sort of exemplified this. I went to a really nice school here in Southern California, and most of the population was Asian, and a handful of those folks came from Southeast Asia. I'm a very social guy. I talk to everybody. I'm probably the first person to say hello and, to offer to share the food that I have with you and not even knowing you. But anyways, year one at college, I had befriended a couple folks who were from Southeast Asia, and they came to the school, introduced themselves. We had a few conversations, and their English was not the best, clearly. So imagine someone from China or Japan trying to speak English. I think we all can get an idea of what that would sound like. But what really struck me was that somewhere around year 2 or 3, I had come across these same individuals, and it was amazing to me that they had changed their names from their native names to Jenny, Michelle, Caitlin. They had dyed their hair or put like blonde highlights in their hair. But what was wild is that their English was superb. I mean, it was like if you would have blindfolded me then, I probably wouldn't have gathered that these folks were from Southeast Asia, because the women sounded like Valley girls. I mean, they were like, oh my gosh, we're going to go to the beach on Saturday, and you know what I'm talking about. But the craziest thing is that, they hadn't lived here long, but they recognized just how important it was to speak the language of the dominant culture if they were going to be taken seriously, and if they were going to be privy to upward opportunities in this country. Another story that resonates with me was, I used to work all through college and even beyond. I worked at a high-end hotel chain for a celebrity chef, and the top 1% in the country. And I remember two guests that came in. It was a party of 2. They were coming in for the 5-course tasting menu with the wine pairing. They sat down at the table, and when a table sits down, the hostess tracks down the server and gives them a little ticket or a chit. And on that chit, you'll find a lot of pertinent information on that party. Whether they have dined there before, it'll have the dates, it'll have the dishes they had, and any comments that related to what they really enjoyed and what they liked. So when they come back in, it just adds for a better experience for them. They feel like you care. They feel like you are in tune to them, right? It's all about them. And so that's the goal. But I remember on the chit, right, the name is always there. And as the server, you're supposed to greet the person that made the reservation. So on the chit, there was the name of Park, like a theme park. And then there was a slash and it was PAK, P-A-K. So me being pretty familiar with the Asian culture, I thought that there was a mistake on our part. So I greeted the table, good evening, Mrs. and Mrs. PAK, P-A-K. And clearly this was a mother and daughter, older lady, younger girl. And the daughter says, whoa, no, it's Park. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. She goes, yeah, that is what the name used to be, was PAK. And so, man, I was extremely inquisitive about this. I said, why did you change the name? And she says, well, it's just too difficult for Americans to pronounce the name. It's just, it's always an explanation behind it. And we figured that if we changed it to Park, it would make it just that much easier for them to be able to pronounce. And I was blown away. I was like, man, like they realize what they have to do to survive, right? But Black people, you haven't really gotten this down yet. And I would say that most Black families or most Black African Americans have been on this land a lot longer than the PAK family. But somehow, some way, we just haven't realized how important it is to speak proper English. I mean, think about it, right? If you're from the turf or you're from the hood, and a person, comes in to visit and, they're speaking proper English, Black people will, and you're a Black person, Black people will denigrate you. Oh, you're talking like a white person. You need to, we don't know if you can hang around us because you sound white, right? I've been told this all of my life, since I was an adolescent. Most of my friends that I grew up with, a lot of these guys surfed. They lived along the beach. But, I played football. Most of those friends were Black. I have friends from all backgrounds, all ethnicities. And I really appreciate that about living on the West Coast because, you get to meet everybody. So, sort of just to wrap it all up, so when I talk about advancement, if you don't realize it's important to speak the language, then, listen to these politicians. This video that I'm going to reference was launched about 6 years ago, but it pertains to the mid 1990s. And it's basically a lot of educators and politicians talking about the negatives around not speaking proper English and how that can affect you academically. And then more importantly, how that can affect you professionally. So check this out.
Isn't that inflammatory?
Sure enough, may be cute on one side of town, but I could not write an essay with sure enough at the university level.
African American students have an average GPA of 1.8.
That are disadvantaged by teachers and tests that don't take language into account.
Standard English. Mark the toy that is behind the sofa. Ebonics version. Mark the toy that is in back of the couch. 2, Standard English version. Point to the squirrel that is beginning to climb the tree. The Ebonics version. Point to the squirrel that is fixing to climb the tree. These changes produce dramatic changes in the children's test scores.
The post where you can tell that the video is a little older, that actual post is trying to make the argument that Ebonics shouldn't be criticized and the person speaking the language shouldn't be taxed because it's just the language of the African Americans. And so we need to have a little bit more reverence and a little bit more patience when it comes to that. But I would argue that that's wrong. I would argue that that is not the way to go. And I would further argue that it's incumbent upon us as Black people to learn the language. We do very well on the basketball court, right? We do very well in sports. We dominate the sports. And why is that? Because we work hard at it. Day to day, we're putting blood, sweat, and tears into being the best athlete. But when it comes to properly speaking language and education, I don't think black folks, I don't think black people take that seriously. So I think my argument stands that there is clearly a download I think my argument stands that there is clearly a download malfunction here because the disconnect is just too wide. Here we are in 2023, and I come across my people all the time and we have conversations, and it just puzzles me how these guys are still sounding like it's 1850 America. It's, if you closed your eyes then, you would think you're talking to somebody and we're living in the Jim Crow era. Clearly, no efforts to speak the language of the dominant culture. So if we're talking about success, so if you're expecting success, if you're expecting people to pull you into those circles where the money is made, or you get an opportunity to retire at a solid company, you need to just drop those expectations if you don't have the basic fundamentals. And that is language, which is one of the top 5 essentials in culture. You got to make people comfortable around you. And if you're talking like lack of a better words or a phrase, like you're uneducated, then you basically shut the door, the moment you open your mouth. So, hey, I hope you guys like the post. Please like, share, and subscribe. We will be launching a video every week on different topics, but I think this topic deserves a part 2, maybe even a part 3, because there's so much to be said around this topic that you can't just do it in 15, 20 minutes. So, hey, thank you all very much. Have a great day, and make sure you're very cognizant of the propaganda that is a download malfunction.
White America was not thrilled. Almost immediately.
Isn't that inflammatory?